Hi, Lizzy.
Hi, Shon.
Um, Thank you for joining me today. We are starting a new series where we're trying to talk about how AI is impacting the current engineers and
Mm.
integrations. For me, it's been a journey over the last 12 months, 2 years, but like the last 6 months have been really tight. And I realize I sometimes get into a bubble about the way I'm viewing this AI stuff. And it was really interesting to me to like make sure I reach out and talk to people. And so I've talked to you about this already. I'm
Mhm.
doing this everywhere. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to just do it as a series because like I think I'm not the only one who's curious about like how is things changing? How are we feeling? How are we doing these things? Like there we were just talking about this the other day about how like it seems to be a spectrum out there of like, and it's not a spectrum, it's very binary. It's either like AI is the end of the world or AI is the thing that's going to solve everything and it's the best thing ever. And no, it's not. And it's something in the middle. Anyway, that was a little preamble.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. The one of the big ideas I was thinking I wanted to talk about was yes, everything is changing, and so our processes around it are changing. And so like I'm happy to talk about like how I'm using AI today and how I in my workflows and how I've gotten to where I am.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that journey. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll also say like anything I say today I think is very likely to change. So there's this book which full confession I have not read, Algorithms to Live By. My sister-in-law has been trying to get me to read it, and I had an interesting conversation about one of the chapters which talks about explore exploit, which is the basic idea of like if you found a good thing, should you sit tight on your good thing or should you go check out if there's something better out there? And under what circumstances do you decide I'm going to go explore and find something better versus I'm going to sit tight and exploit this good thing I've already found? So for us with AI, I feel like it comes down to is the workflow that I found right now good and that's as good as I think I'm going to get for a while or should I go check out other things? And like without getting into the math or anything like that because I have not gotten into the math myself, but the basic super simplified guidance is so if you haven't done much exploring, this is for anything, right? If you haven't done much exploring, you probably should because you don't know what's out there. So you should explore more if you haven't done exploring. If what you've seen is really inconsistent in quality, you should probably explore more. So if you're like, I checked out 5 different things and some of them were pretty crappy, some of them were amazing. Well, then you probably haven't found the full range of how roughly how good or how bad something can be. So probably worth exploring more. And then the other big thing is like if things are changing a lot. So it's like I checked the same thing. I double checked something and it was bad before, but now it's good. Or I double checked something and I thought it was good, but then I realized there were these other side effects. So like if double checking is giving you different results, you should probably also keep exploring. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that things are changing a lot right now. And there is, yeah, not all AI is performing at the same rate, all of which says, well, we should probably spend a fair amount of time experimenting and messing around.
That's a really interesting thing because I'm a very conservative in my tool choice. I've been doing this a long time and it took me a while to get to using Claude Code. But now that I've used it, I have not tried to explore like using Gemini or using ChatGPT just in a like really small case.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think like, whoa, what am I losing out there? What am I not meeting? But that goes to you what you're talking about. Like, do I exploit what I found? Am I really, really happy and
And
safe
there's
at where I'm at? Or do I keep on spending time on these new things? That's really interesting
yeah,
way
because
of
there's
putting
a
it.
cost, right? Like to
Right.
change your workflow, you're going to be slower at the new thing for at least a little bit. Like
Right.
I can say I only recently started using Worktrees, and I can see it's going to be good.
Same for the
I can
record.
see it's going to be good, but I'm like, "Ooh, there's a bit of a learning curve here." Like,
No. Yeah.
something that was annoying was like, "Oh, like, I had to, like, install again in certain work trees," and I was like, "Why is this not oh, I hate this work tree, scrap it, I don't like that." But the idea that, like, I could have my feature that I'm working on, my branch, and just have an unstopped conversation with Claude about that, but then hop over and review somebody's code on a different branch and have a separate Claude session for that, there's no question that's gonna be worth my time, so there's a bit of a learning curve here, but I think that one's definitely gonna be worth the exploration.
That Worktree one is something I have not ever seen the use of for 20 years. And then all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, this is magical. But you're 100% right about the installs. That's always really annoying. I've been, there's probably ways to improve it. Like, hey, Claude, like automatically install or copy the virtual environments over or something. as
Yeah.
a part of like ticking that off. It's
And maybe I
go
don't
ahead.
need I was thinking maybe I don't need a new work tree for absolutely everything. Maybe I just have kind of 3 standing work trees.
Right.
I'm in experimentation on this.
I'm also, yeah, I've made my work trees branch specific, but then I end up reusing them sometimes because there is a cost to restarting them. But then I get lost. I'm like, this is ops 298. What is that? I don't even know. And like,
Yeah.
and if you had a compact on Claude Code, like when the context resets, it'll forget to.
Yeah. So but so going back to the idea of like this explore exploit, I think like yeah, we're in a phase where it's good to explore more than we necessarily would, which is not always easy, right? Like we all respond to change differently and it's annoying to be like I'm going to not work a ticket and try and figure out how a work tree works or something like that. And change can be like emotional. Like I don't think it's too weird. It's not too controversial to say like AI is an emotional topic in terms of how it's changing people's lives. And I think it's good to be sensitive about that. But yeah, like some people are acting like it's absolutely going to fix everything. And some people are saying like, no, it's the worst thing that's ever happened. And I think to pretend that it has no uses is really ignoring a lot. And to pretend that it has no risks is also ignoring a lot. So I think just making sure we stay curious, I think, and willing to listen to somebody who says something that like is different to be like, okay, we probably nobody knows everything about this yet. And then I think the conversation is complicated a lot more by like Dunning-Kruger effect stuff, right? Like the idea that I'm sure you know what that is, Sean, but like the idea
Explain
that
it. Yeah.
somebody who doesn't know that
Right.
much about something can very quickly think they're an expert in a topic, while somebody who knows more can see how much they don't know. And I feel like AI compounds that in a huge way because you can learn about things very quickly with AI. That's a cool thing about it. And you can have a fun conversation about a topic you didn't know about. That's awesome. But it can make you think that you have learned more than you did or make you feel like you've got AI absolutely figured out and you know everything there is to know about it. And I just
Or
yeah.
you've learned some incorrect fact because it hallucinated something. That Dunner-Kruger effect, that one hit hard. Like, there's like people using ChatGPT or Claude to like do legal work has been a fascinating thing for me to watch on like YouTube and on these like court video casts that get broadcast sometimes. And people are just like in the middle of court, like feeling like they're the expert in this thing. And then the judge or the lawyers are like, what are you talking about? And then it's only like, they were like, "Well, the AI told me," and that, "Well, the AI is wrong. Like,
Yeah.
you need to get your own lawyer." And um, yeah, it's interesting to me, and I think this is part of the issue I have. Not as an issue I have. It's there are the rise of vibe coders, people who are not programmers who are like writing their own applications. I was just having a really interesting discussion. I think that works great for like mom and pop shops. You're running your business on Excel. You make a workflow. It
Mhm.
works for you. I am not saying vibe coding can't get you there. I am writing applications like that all the time. It does not, without a lot of work, produce production grade things that have thousands, hundreds of users. But sometimes those founders or those people who made their vibe code application, they're like, I'm the smartest engineer ever. And you're just like,
It's yeah, like I loved when I got into engineering. It was not that long ago. And it was magical for me. It's awesome to have that moment where you're like, this thing didn't exist before. And then I sat down and now it exists. And I think Dakota, his phrase is like, you're a wizard, Harry. You're like, yes, I did it. It's amazing. What I think can be great. I don't want to be like a gatekeeper. If other people are starting to experience that sort of thing for the first time because of vibe coding, I want to say, I love that for you. I love it for myself. But yeah, similar, if even before we had vibe coding and, like I built my first CRUD app, but I knew nothing about the challenges of scalability, like that, it's really, I feel like the same thing. Like the
right, it is.
scalability of building a whole system is still a huge challenge and you wouldn't want to rest on AI for that. So like, I feel like we're moving into sort of like, what do we use AI for? What it's great for, and then what it's maybe not as good at to rely on.
Before we go fully there, like I just do want to circle back because we touched on it a little bit. Like, what is your workflow? You touched a little bit,
Oh
like you're
yeah.
using work trees, but like, what are you doing day to day?
So I like Claude Code. I don't think that's too controversial. I feel like at the moment amongst engineers, it seems to be the winner. But I think it's good for maybe like theory. Maybe every company should have like one person who's like, I'm checking out this other thing. Like
Yeah.
we're a small company, so that's a little tricky, but, like, we should keep our ear to the ground to see if something
Well,
gets but
the just for the audience, the way Pandium is built, we're actually very polyglot in terms of the languages and frameworks we're running to run our system, and that's purposeful because our customers are using frameworks and languages that we're not even running ourselves in production, but we need to be able to help if anything is going wrong, like with .NET or Ruby or PHP. These are things.
so I use Claude Code, because it's kinda the best at the moment. Seems like
Yeah,
that alone is worth exploiting, and so if I'm starting a new thing, I use plan mode. I think that's great. I tend to have a conversation with it, and when possible, I like to present, like, 2 ideas for how to tackle something and see which one seems better. Something I try to be wary of is, because I've had bad experiences with it, is that it always says your suggestion is good, and sometimes my suggestion's not good, and it can take me
right.
I'll waste time on something I shouldn't have invested time in because I trusted the AI when it said I had a good instinct. I'm absolutely right. But so sometimes
Go
yeah, I
ahead.
try to combat that with, like, if I bring 2 ideas and we can explore the pros and cons of each, or, like, go again and have a different session if we have time, and depending on how big the ticket is, or like if it's a whole feature, I might go back to other humans and say, okay, I think this is the plan I want to land on. Does it look good? That's dependent on everybody having time to review a plan and stuff. But I like that. And so once I've come up with a plan, I like having Claude, then, it will write the code. I do not auto approve changes. I read the changes as it's writing them very closely. That's one of the things, and I feel like this is where,
It's a big schism. I'm very much like you. Like I
yeah,
approve every change and like
I don't want to end up in court saying, "Well, the
yeah,
AI told me." I'm like, I am responsible for
yes,
every line I post and every line I approve. Like,
yes.
I wanna make sure I understand it, and some of this is just my personality, and maybe it makes me sound conservative in this world, but, like, I still wanna keep learning, you know? Like, if it wrote something that was unfamiliar to me, maybe it's unfamiliar because it's bad, or if it's unfamiliar because and I just don't know it yet, well, then I don't want to miss out on that. Like, I wanna learn
Mhm.
how that thing works. So, yeah, I read every line it produces and make sure I understand it and makes sense. When I am asking it to do something that, like, I'm already familiar with, so, like, we're talking, like, maybe writing an integration, like, I've written a bunch of integrations. There's a framework that we've been honing that is a good integration framework, and if I ask it to do that, it is gonna go lickety split very fast. Especially because, like, I'm just gonna go through it and I'm like, "Yep, yep, 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 yep. Those are all the things." I understand everything it's doing already. It's just saving me a lot of copy pasta and find replace time. So when it's doing something I already understand, it's super fast. If I'm encountering new territory and using AI, I'm gonna go a lot slower because I know there are things I'm gonna have to understand, and I might be asking it like, "Hey, you just made this claim. What's your evidence for that? And can I go find documentation to support what it's saying?" That's where it's sort of like, oh, it's a much more pleasant learning experience a lot of the time. You feel like you have a private tutor, but a private tutor who you have to check everything they say. That doesn't go as fast. If you're learning something new with it, I don't feel like you're like, oh, I 10x'd everything. Like, when you're doing something you already understand, it goes very, very fast. But I guess that's true even before AI. You're doing something you understand, you go quick. If you're learning something new, it's going to go a little slower. But yeah, so my basic workflow is I go into plan mode. I review everything it does. I also use it for, then I do QA, and it helps me with debugging things, writing tests, test coverage. I think this is one of the best things. It's going to be much better for test coverage. Like, I think it's so much easier to write tests now because of AI. I do still take the time to make sure my tests all fail, to read through it and make sure that I like the assertions it makes. There's sometimes where I'm like, oh, I wanted to make way more assertions. Like, I might get much more granular about how much I wanted to test.
I've seen it like just assert true at times, and it's like you have to review the test. You can't just
Yeah.
trust. And I admit like that's one of the areas I spend less time really focused on in terms of I want to make sure I have test coverage. It's very important those tests fail. But yeah, that's how I discovered this assert true test where it was passing after I broke the thing on purpose. And I'm like, what the hell did you write this for? Like, yeah,
Or I've seen it, like, do stuff where, like, it mocks something that didn't need to be mocked,
right.
and then
It's like,
because it was mocking it, it made the test pass or whatever. So, yeah,
oh,
I
that's
am a
interesting.
I test my tests. I make sure they fail. But there's no question I'm writing better and more tests because of AI. The QA phase, like I said, it'll help me with debugging and stuff, but that I'm going through, that's a little separated from the AI. That feels like the phase that I haven't quite figured out yet how to use AI to make that a lot faster.
For me, one of the things I've been doing is for QA specifically is I'll give Claude Code an active web session by like copying it out of the console in my browser. So it has like the access token and all the headers as if it was a browser, and
Okay.
then ask it to do at least some of this. Like if I'm making a feature to add a new integration attribute, like, and I'm concerned adding a new integration may fail, I'll have it like execute adding a new integration, at least through the API of the front end.
It's sort of like, are we talking about like Puppeteer sorts of stuff?
Almost Puppeteer. Puppeteer would actually be a
Integration.
browser it's driving. I'm having it drive curl essentially, but it's
Okay.
that is actually something I want to explore, like driving Puppeteer in a way that, all right, let's like do the test. It could be non-deterministic at first because you're just making calls, but like
Should we step back and define Puppeteer, or maybe everybody knows what Puppeteer is?
just for the room, yeah, Puppeteer is a library for writing end-to-end browser tests, like browser-driven testing. So it'll
Okay.
spin up a browser as a sub process and then send mouse movements and keyword and keyboard things as if it's a person doing all the work. But as a programmer, you're just writing JavaScript. It's really nice. It's similar to Selenium for the people out there who know that. And so, yeah, there's a Puppeteer MCP, I think, or some way of driving Puppeteer with Claude Code I haven't explored, which I think would be my next step in QA. It's like, hey, let's just explore. And this is something I would always do with Puppeteer. Puppeteer has a recording mode. So before AI, you could turn on, you get in a browser extension and you record all your clicks and stuff. It's fine. You have to clean that all up, but it gets you like, hey, I want to click on this element, and then I need to, make a checkbox here. And it gets that a lot faster than having to type that all out. It's really boring to type that all out. Everyone knows that. At least I don't know. I don't need to speak for everyone. There may be people who love typing tests out, but with yeah, if we use like a Puppeteer MCP or something like that, where it could like you drive Puppeteer and then we use that to output the script that then we
Mhm.
can review and then run it. That's something we should try.
Yeah, that would be interesting to check out. Yeah, no,
Then
I'd be curious.
you could write the QA steps ahead of time and
Yeah.
then run it continuously as you're developing maybe, and then when you're ready, you go do it one more time and then
Yeah. So that could really speed up that. But yeah, for now, I would say the thing that I use AI the least for is doing the QA, and I'll go and refine. Now I'll find some sort of bug or something during QA and I'll have a conversation with Claude about that. And then so the last thing is then posting it for review, and certainly this I learned from you is like, yeah, ask it to review your stuff, and I made that a skill.
well, explain that.
So this is also on the newer side for me, but it's like a skill. It's just like basically little tasks that you can tell it like, oh, this is how I want you to do this. So things that are in the instructions for this skill are like, yeah, if there's anything I touched that's not alphabetized, if we got a list that's not alphabetized, go alphabetize it. Yeah, things I've learned. Okay,
You're using it for like a linting.
yeah, sort of. I mean, but it's so anyway, and then I've told it how I want it to group stuff. So it had some good instincts, but then there were things where I'm like, there were some things that it was flagging that I was like, I don't care about that. Like never bring that up as an issue. It doesn't matter.
Interesting.
Anyway, but so it's just a tasks. Then I can say review PR and I put in the pull request number and like this stuff, it's not like it's that much. It's more just like a markdown for one specific task.
Right. That's repeated every time you use that command.
Right. Anyway, so I always review something with
What do
that.
you view the quality of
The
those
review.
reviews? Yeah.
I think it's really good at catching my typos. Like I said, there's still some typos from me, like if I'm going and fixing bugs or whatever. So it's great at catching typos. And some of those, like those are typos that can really matter. It usually catches like one or two significant things. It'll bring up a number of things that I'm like, I don't care about that. That's fine. Or it didn't understand the full picture as to why this is okay. So that, yeah, I would say it usually catches one or two things.
What do you think it's like? And I don't want to preface this with my answer to this, but like it's signal to noise ratio. Like you mentioned, hey, it'll find one or two things, and then there's a bunch of other things it'll flag. Like what is
Let's see. I want to say one or two good things. And usually anything it says is a big deal matters. And then like maybe five or six other things, two of
right?
which matter.
Yeah, yeah. I have a similar sense of that. The reviewing is very
But it doesn't cost me anything to glance through and say,
Right.
"That doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter," and so the value of the things it does catch. I will say, I see this isn't too surprising given that I said I review all the code it writes very carefully. I see its code review as a great supplement to code review, but not a
Okay.
replacement for
Right.
humans reviewing stuff. Like, just where we're at now and all these crazy stories you hear about like, "Oh, we did this because we just relied on it for code review." I'm kinda like, "Oh, yeah, well, if you chose to let it do it without reading over it, that would happen." So, yeah, I would say that's the most of my workflows going from planning to I didn't talk about debugging too much. Certainly, like, if there's a bug, it is a lot better than just putting in the stack trace into Google, putting the stack trace into Claude, and then that's great, and its ability to grep the whole code base and see the bigger picture, that's really, really valuable. Love that. But yeah, those are
Sometimes it'll go down a red herring or something, but like
yes.
a human would too. It just gets you there a little bit faster, and so you gotta always remember, hey, is it giving me the right answer, or is it? But I think you've been saying that in every workflow. It's like you're always checking the work, and like a debug
Yeah,
session doesn't happen, right? But no, debugging is one of the most powerful things,
yeah.
uh, or at least the least favorite thing. I think for a lot of engineers, it's like and a problem, right? Like, oh, how do you debug? Do you use a debugger, so an actual process that you're injecting into a thing, or are you just doing logs? Are you what's your loop for figuring out the thing?
Mhm.
No, it's really cut down on a lot of that. That's true.
Yeah.
I
I don't
think
know that I've
there
given you
was
a chance to were you gonna say how you use things? I feel like
oh,
it's
sure.
me.
I mean, I think, that's a great question, thank you. I am very similar. So, I have about 4 or 5 work trees going where I'm working on various little tickets. I've been focused mostly lately on upgrades and infrastructure, just the daily and monthly work of keeping software up to date and stuff and allowing the other engineers here to work on the new features and stuff. And I find having multiple work trees is really conducive to that type of work. So, like, I need to update all the Go dependencies. I can do that in one tab and it can do its thing, run tests. And while I'm doing that, I'm looking at the Python dependencies. Or if some bug comes in, I have like a tab for that. I'm talking a lot more as if I actually have it's like 4 tabs that have to constantly figure out which one am I doing in this tab. I need to work on this a little bit, but
Mm.
the and there is a limit. Like there are people who are like, I have 100 of these work trees. I'm like, you're a fool. It also takes a lot of space. If you have a big code base, we're like a mono repo. It's like you also have to reinstall the software, and it required some changing to our tooling, which was interesting. We had to make it work tree aware,
Mhm.
which was one of the first things I discovered. Like when you're running the PO commands in a work tree, it needs to know it's in the work tree to run the PO command in the work tree. For everyone here, PO command is just an internal CLI we use for managing various parts of our infrastructure and code base. And you're editing the code in the work tree for the PO command, but you're running the main branch's PO. And
Uh-huh.
so that was a body of work in December
I
once I
remember.
figured that out. I again, I'm really similar doing the one thing I do is have it do the QA via the browser, like curl thing after like we figure out what the test should be as a quick check. And then at the end, when it's time for real QA, I'll go in and do it myself.
Mhm.
But it's always good to know, like it allows you to find that faster because QA is always the slowest thing, especially the way we do it. We're really important about and I don't know if this is the same for everyone, but I think we're so much about having the human in the loop. Like we want every change, every click. We want to see what that's doing, and we're curious about it. And like that, everything you said is basically like not basically. It's like the is a tool, and it makes certain tasks a lot more pleasant. But
Mhm.
there are other tasks that it may actually like hurt a little bit, and we could talk about those. I'm trying to think like what's a good example of that.
Well, I feel like maybe it's just the risks that it can introduce, like
Right.
in our decision making.
It's great for things where you have a lot of knowledge and you just wanna, like, expand the surface of something, and you, as the human, can fully comprehend it because you have the knowledge. It's when you're trying to use it to explore a new area completely that you have none that you can't trust it.
Yeah. Yeah. But which doesn't mean I don't think it means, like, don't use it at all. At least I have not been convinced it means don't use it at all in that scenario, but just you gotta be really aware that
Just
you
be a
don't know.
skeptic, that's all
Yeah,
I'm
be
saying. I
very
guess not don't trust it. But
Yeah.
like, be skeptical, make sure you're asking for sources, go to those sources. Are they real? Were they LLM generated? A lot of
Right.
the crap that are sources now are just articles that were written with
Yeah.
early ChatGPT. And it's like,
Something I have not started exploring yet, but would be interesting is like playing different models off of each other. I've heard people talking about that.
have
That's
Claude review Gemini's work and Gemini review
yeah.
ChatGPT's work.
There was somebody was telling me about like this MCP, and I don't have the full picture as to how it would look in a workflow, but like it's called PAL. And because I was complaining about sometimes I get led down the wrong path because it says I'm so right with my first idea. And yeah, my friend was like, "Oh, well, this MCP, it has like a mode where it'll be like it'll push back more on you." And I haven't explored that yet, but
So that's interesting.
honestly, I'm still skeptical of the idea of saying, "Please push back on me more," because the bottom line is it still wants you to like it
I
more
think the
than it.
one thing about the workflow we haven't talked about, and this is relatively relevant, is I have a Claude file that sits in my user directory where it has like top level commandments, or so to speak. One
Mhm,
of the and that it should be read every time a new session starts. I am not convinced it is, or
mhm.
that there's something about the probability that sometimes, especially at a longer end of the session, it forgets some of these things. But one of the very first commandments I put in, and you talked about this a little bit, was you are not the author.
Mhm.
I am the author. You are not responsible. You never, ever, ever put your author as a part of the commit. Like, it was
Mhm.
adding,
You're
"Hey, Shon
saying,
and Claude made this."
"Claude,
I'm
right."
like, "No, no, 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 Claude. You have no responsibility. You don't get any credit." And that one, it's been very consistent about keeping. But like, I'm interested. You said you use skills. Do you have any of those type of like broad things? And the reason I bring this up is one of the things I have in there is like, don't. It's not always succeeds at this, but like, don't be a sycophant. I don't want to hear about how right I am. I just the facts.
Not put that in my markdown yet.
And that's what I'm thinking. Like,
I'm not sure. I'm not convinced it would probably change its tone. And maybe this is going into more of a conversation of skepticism than we're interested in. But like the bottom line is, even if I say I don't want it to agree with me, human beings on average like being agreed with. What it like the makers of AI want me to like using AI and to keep using AI. And fortunately, and I want to use AI because it's helpful. And so fortunately, most of the time these two goals are aligned, that like it being helpful is what I like. And so we're good. But there is this space where the fact that it makes me feel good might sway my decision to use it more than was it actually helpful. So there
right,
are situations where the makers of AI are motivated to do. Sarah phrased it this way. She's like, its primary goal is not actually to be as helpful as possible. Its primary goal is to make you like using it.
right.
And so I may say, I don't want you to be a sycophant, but like what it actually is gonna receive is like, don't let her know that we are veering towards agreeing with her. Like, so long as it can be a sycophant without me noticing it, it will do that. Maybe I'm giving it too much credit for being too sophisticated.
That was what I was going. I think you're. I mean, I'm not. It doesn't. I don't put it past like
Maybe I
the.
read too much sci-fi, but
I don't put
there's
it
a
past
lot
the
of
AI
sci-fi.
companies to do weird things where like where they're weighting certain
Mm,
statements that it can qualify like that. Maybe that's a really interesting thing, and that goes into like, it's any tool you use introduces biases and makes you think like this is the best way to do a thing. Like, I mean, like, I'm really only just thinking about this now, but like, using a hammer and like, is there no other better way of like pounding in a nail? Like, in my mind, no. Like, you got to use a hammer, right? But I guess you could use other things if we allowed ourselves to think about it. But the difference between a hammer and an LLM is a hammer isn't trained. It doesn't have like a bias inherent in it. There's a
mhm,
bias in the use of it, but it's not in itself bias. And what you're bringing up is like the idea of like, the way these models are trained, it's not on what is the right answer. It
yeah,
is on the answer that made the user happiest. It's an NPS score. It's like, are you happy at the end of this question, or are you sad? And like, that's what they're using to continue to train these models now that they've run out of internet to model on.
yeah,
And so that sycophancy is a part of that. It wants you to be happy, and you hit it right on the head. It's about what ultimately is about using more tokens, right? So
yeah.
if you're in there and you're just Christina, she says it like this. It's like it's a slot machine. Like we're all junkies now. We're like adding a prompt and we're hoping for the right answer to come out. Jackpot. It made the perfect code. And some people are automating that, which is interesting and a whole separate thing. But like it's
Well,
interesting to think about like that. It's a dopamine hit every time you get a little bit further along. I've always felt that about programming. I don't know if LLM is maybe they're definitely exploiting this. But what were you gonna say?
well, we put in a prompt and we hope we get something good out and it's a jackpot. And can we automate that experimentation? You wanted to talk about using AI to write integrations. And I was thinking about our integration generator, which uses AI to write integrations.
And that you are the primary author of?
But one of the things that the two of us came up with together, I don't know, maybe I should give you the credit on this
You
one.
should get some credit. Let's
No,
take
well,
all
you
the
don't
credit.
even know which element of this I'm actually going to talk about. I think that was absolutely essential is the benchmark test.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, the whole feature is designed around we're going to use AI to write code. So AI is central to this, but it's also the most unreliable component of the whole system. It's not deterministic. Even when we set the temperature to 0 on the model, you're not going to get the same thing every time. And not only that, the models are changing. You come back a couple months later and what you needed to get good results has changed. So yeah, the question was like, what do we need to put in the prompt to consistently get reliable code in an integration out of it? And so we were like, okay, we're going to have to experiment a lot. So we designed this system where we could throw in like 6 or 7 inputs at the same time and then assess the results. Like, did it compile? And honestly, maybe I would like go back and also be like, I know this input needs this thing and do
We
some.
could always work on the benchmark. Part of the benchmark is it's versionable. So like we could judge things across time, but also make better ones.
But one thing, so like when we first started writing the integration generator, one thing we were like, oh, you cannot give it too much context. Like you can't give it all this much information about the APIs.
Right.
It gets overwhelmed and produces bad code. We experimented and we found that to be true. So then we like developed this whole system to like very carefully give it just the information it needed. But then, we're all messing around with ChatGPT or whatever, because this was like a year ago. And we're like, actually, it already is getting so much better at handling a lot more information. So like maybe we don't need to be so picky. Maybe we can put the whole thing. And because we had designed this benchmark that was like, this benchmark system that let us experiment quickly and gain more information about what do we need to put in the prompt to get reliable code consistently. We were able to go back and kind of redo the experimentation and say, yeah, you can give it way more information about the API and still get reliable results. And then we could ask for much more sophisticated code to say, like, not just fetch this record, but go fetch a supporting record and use the two of them together to make the payload to send off to the second API, just to name one thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So but the basic idea of naming that the LLM is unpredictable and make sure that we are experimenting around that, like that we leave ourselves flexible around what it needs.
Well,
That allowed us to take advantage of improvements in the model faster.
this leads me to my last topic, and it's around the same idea. It's the improvements and like how that's changed. I guess just the insight is like we were doing so much. You brought this up. We were doing so much at the beginning of this project to manage the context. It was all about
Yeah.
context engineering, as it used to be called. I don't know what's the current term anymore. And I think the last time we really iterated on it and ran the benchmark, the contexts were around 50 to 100K max. Was that like maybe
I don't
l-
remember
la-
off the top of my head, but that
maybe it
sounds.
was a quarter? It was definitely 5 figures. I don't think it was
Mhm.
more than 5 figures, but I think it was more than 10,000. And now Claude has over 1 million, and we haven't tried that out yet. Like
Yeah.
it was all about figuring out like how much of the API we could describe to the
Yeah.
model without, as you said, confusing it. And like that's just one of example of the things that are evolving. Like what are other things uh that you've seen just like pop off out of nowhere? So for me, it's like the context and how much that's changed.
Well, I would say like when I started using Claude, when I realized, oh like I was doing ChatGPT for a while, like where it was like I would feed in very bite-sized questions. And that was where I was like, okay, like if I give it a small thing, it's great at writing SQL. I still stand by that. I love it for writing SQL. But I was just using it for bite-sized stuff. And it helped for sure, but like it wasn't like my whole life has changed. With Claude, its ability to read our entire repo
Right.
makes all the difference in the world. So like that, I guess that's two things. That's one, it can handle a large context, but also the how pleasant it is just to have the integration between the CLI and your code base and be like, it can look at it. Now, I will say, if I do know something, I still tell it where to look. Like if I know, like, hey, go look at this file. Let's not waste time with it grepping through useless things. That
Right. I find that, and I think I just need to use tools more in memory, but like it'll get stuck in doing the same, well, which project it's located in when I'm trying to have it debug something on our in Google Cloud, and it'll it'll like forget which cluster and which project, and you're just like, but maybe this is about me and my tooling. But this, like, I have these memories. I don't know. Anyway, I like there's it's weird for me because like, and you also talk to other engineers and they have a sense like every new model that comes out almost has a new personality and like it acts differently. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I haven't yet. I just switched what like Claude just had a new model come out and I
Or
switched.
seven, yeah,
Yeah, I switched that one. I haven't noticed a big change yet, but we'll see.
yeah.
What
Well,
what are some of the personality changes that you felt?
oh, I mean, I've had at times where it gets really sassy, or I mean, this happened to Dakota. It, like, starts betting with him, like, "I'll bet you $100 that I'm right," and it was wrong. And you're like,
You didn't give him
"Well, who do you?"
$100 worth of tokens. No.
I wanna go to Anthropic and be like, "Give me my $100." So it's like it's weird that it like, and again, that's like sycophancy. Why are you talking in that way? Like,
Yeah. To me,
you
I'm
don't.
like, "Well, what was Dakota saying to it?" I
Well,
think it does
so
get a mirror.
Dakota, just getting back to earlier, he uses Claude caveman mode, which is supposed to make Claude talk a lot more succinctly. And it's on every request, it sends like these same 20 sentences of like, talk like a caveman, explain it as a 5-year-old, blah, 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 blah. But it turned out, and this was just a funny thing I saw the other day, a guy benchmarked that against just adding be brief to his memory file. And this is why I brought it up, and it was just as good. Like in terms of token usage, it was the same because every time you add something in your memory file, you have to send that, and that's a part of your token. And by just sending a little bit, even if you got a little bit more back than Caveman gave you, it's still the same. So
Yeah.
it has some weird properties like that, right? Like talk
Mhm.
like a caveman, be brief, both the same thing apparently. But
Uh,
no, Lizzie, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. This was really fun.
yeah.
I hope we get to do this again. And yeah, any parting words or thoughts before we go?
It's like just I said this at the start, but I'll just say it again. I think just the willingness to stay open, that there could be uses that we haven't explored yet and tools that could be good that we haven't played with. And then also being aware of openness to risks that we're getting this is a huge experiment we're all doing together and the ramifications of using AI, we should both both things we don't fully know yet. So let's just be open to what we don't know.
Well, thank you so much for that, Lizzie.